Hello, and welcome to today's webinar hosted by the National Student Support Accelerator, the New Jersey Tutoring Corps, the Partnership for Student Success, and the Pathways Alliance on unlocking apprenticeship opportunities for tutors, practical strategies for considering, designing, and implementing tutor apprenticeship programs. I'm Kate Cochran, the Managing Director of the Partnership for Student Success. We're a national coalition based at the Johns Hopkins University Everyone Graduates Center, and we are comprised of a group of nonprofit organizations, districts, and higher education institutions working to expand evidence-based student supports for all K-12 students, including high-impact tutoring. This webinar is being recorded, and a link to the recording and the slides will be shared with everyone who registered at some point next week. So, as high-impact tutoring programs grow, evolve, and seek to diversify their funding sources, there's a promising opportunity to align state workforce systems and apprenticeship pathways, expanding the support and recognition available for the evidence-based work of tutoring. To help realize this potential, our four organizations who are hosting this call came together to release a Tutor Apprenticeship Toolkit, which provides the rationale, step-by-step guidance, resources, and an in-depth example for developing an evidence-based Tutor Registered Apprenticeship Program. In today's webinar, you'll hear from four speakers, including myself. I'm joined by Sabrina Baptiste, who's the Project Director of the Pathways Alliance at Innovate EDU. Ashley Benkin is the Chief of Staff at the New Jersey Tutoring Corps, and Kathy Bendheim is the Strategic Advising Director at the National Student Support Accelerator. During today's webinar, we'll walk you through aspects of the Tutor Apprenticeship Toolkit, including some framing on what registered apprenticeships are, the opportunity presented for tutor apprenticeships, an example program in action, the New Jersey Tutoring Corps, as well as some practical strategies for determining whether a tutor apprenticeship is the right fit for your program, how to design research-aligned programs, and implement programs effectively. So we have a lot to cover. There will be time for Q&A toward the end of the webinar. So please, as we're speaking, please add questions to the Q&A feature that you should see on your screen throughout the webinar, and we should be able to get to them later on in the webinar. So to provide a little bit of framing, as more communities work to sustain proven and high-impact tutoring programs, new opportunities are emerging to tap into state workforce systems and apprenticeship funding, resources that haven't been traditionally accessible to the tutoring field. So after the New Jersey Tutoring Corps became the first tutor registered apprenticeship in the country, our four organizations joined forces to develop a set of national guideline standards for tutor apprenticeships. National guideline standards, if you're new to the apprenticeship space, are a structure used by the U.S. Department of Labor across professions outside of the field, including and outside of the field of education, to outline key components of a quality apprenticeship program in a given profession. They include competencies that an apprentice should master during their apprenticeship, and a number of other guidelines for a quality apprenticeship program. We received input and guidance on these standards from a range of experts and practitioners, maybe some of you on this call, and we submitted them to the U.S. Department of Labor and are currently awaiting approval. We're optimistic that these will be approved. And as part of this process, we also proposed updates to the current U.S. Department of Labor definition of tutor, which is currently fairly test prep focused. We proposed updates to make it something that more closely aligns with a tutor's role in a high impact and evidence-based tutoring setting. So I'm going to add to the chat the draft standards. This is the version that was submitted to the U.S. Department of Labor. Have not yet been approved, but still a helpful resource that we'll go into a little bit more throughout the webinar. So we also developed a tutor apprenticeship toolkit, which is the first in a set of implementation resources that we plan to release. And we're planning to launch a working group for peer learning on this topic in April. We'll share a little bit more about how to get involved in that if you're interested at the end. So the goal of these resources, it will make it easier for high impact tutoring programs to secure apprenticeship funding and better equip their tutors with credentials and workforce aligned professional development and on-the-job learning. So what is a registered apprenticeship program? We go over these basics, knowing that in the field of education, many of us did not know this information before we really delved into this. And we know that apprenticeships are not traditionally something that people in the high impact tutoring field are familiar with, which is why you'll see us going into some of these basics. So forgive us if this is information you already know. But a registered apprenticeship is a structured, competency-based U.S. Office of Apprenticeship recognized program that provides paid on-the-job training and related instruction to prepare individuals for a career as a tutor and to earn a nationally recognized credential. So it's not an internship, it's not something that's informal, it's really something that's structured, has to provide pay, has to provide on-the-job learning, and has to provide related instruction. So that's instruction outside of the class, outside of the on-the-job learning to help the apprentice learn and grow as a professional. So why consider a registered apprenticeship for tutoring? Why are we so excited about this? While starting and operating a registered apprenticeship program is certainly a significant undertaking, I don't want to discount that this is a big thing. It really is a big opportunity for tutoring employers and for tutors, knowing that by definition, many high impact tutoring programs typically have really robust training, professional development, and training structures already in place, which will serve you well in an apprenticeship structure. So for employers, employers of tutors, some of the benefits of implementing a registered apprenticeship could include federal and state funding opportunities, recruitment and retention advantages, given what we know about how candidates value opportunities for professional growth and advancement, research-aligned tutor development, and educator workforce development through strengthening pipelines, for example, from tutor to teacher. Both Ashley and Sabrina are going to say a little bit more about this later on. For tutors, the benefits include increased wages once they complete their apprenticeship and actually in the middle of their apprenticeship as well. It's required as part of an apprenticeship to have a progressive wage schedule. It also includes the benefit of work integrated learning experiences with pathways to advancement and financial stability, includes comprehensive training and support, and also upon completing an apprenticeship, tutors will receive a nationally recognized credential. And for the broader field of high impact tutoring, benefits include the opportunity to further scale quality implementation through workforce development and access to funding streams that as I said before, haven't traditionally been accessible for tutoring programs. And that these apprenticeship funding right now does have bipartisan support, which is a great thing to have. So some key terms, again, really going over these. It'll be important as we talk through for you to be familiar with these terms. And we are calling these out specifically because they aren't terms that we typically use in the field of education, in high impact tutoring, but that are very important when talking about apprenticeships. So the employer. The employer is the entity that formally sponsors and administers the program. The employer is the person, really what you think of as an employer. This is probably the most obvious one, responsible for providing the apprenticeship program and ensuring that it meets U.S. Department of Labor standards. Your apprenticeship training representative, or ATR, is a person who is employed by the U.S. Department of Labor or a state apprenticeship agency who provides technical assistance to develop and register apprenticeship programs, navigate state and federal regulations, and identify potential funding for apprenticeship programs. On-the-job learning or training is a training method where it is what it sounds like, where employees learn new skills and knowledge while they're performing their actual work duties. We know this happens a lot in the field of education. We may just not use this term, but hands-on approach where employees learn through observation, practice, and immediate feedback, often guided by more experienced colleagues or supervisors. Related instruction or related technical instruction, same thing, but two different terms that can be used this is instruction or training that's supplemental to on-the-job learning, on-the-job training. So it may include coursework with a post-secondary institution, a college, a trade school, other other certificate granting institution, or other technical skill development. And then finally, the sponsor is the entity responsible for registering, administering, and operating the program. So they're essentially the administrators of the apprenticeship, ensuring that it complies with regulations and standards. The sponsor can be the same entity as the employer. You'll see similarities there, but it doesn't have to be. There are also examples of a single sponsor who sponsors multiple employers. So now that we've gotten our key terms out of the way, I'm excited to turn things over to Ashley, who's going to share more details about how a registered apprenticeship program works, and specifically on the registered apprenticeship program that she runs in New Jersey. Ashley.
Thank you so much, Kate. Excited to be here with you all today and talk about our favorite thing, tutor apprenticeships. So building on the foundational knowledge that Kate just provided, the graphic that you're seeing is pretty critical, just sort of foundational understanding. If this is going to work for you in the program that you're running, you want to think about, am I the employer or do I work with an employer? Who is the employer? Am I the sponsor? Or am I the related instruction provider, right? Because that combination is really important. Building that team is incredibly important as well, because as we all are experts in implementing high quality, high impact tutoring programs, pretty critical that everyone on that team has a really important role, and that there's really good feedback loops to make sure that everyone's working towards the same outcomes for kids. So as you think about those things, that's what we're going to talk about today, is how New Jersey Tutoring Corps has identified and structured our apprenticeship program and following that kind of organization. Once you have, oh, sorry, hold on. I know I'm going a little bit different direction, Kate. Before I talk about New Jersey Tutoring Corps, the other thing that I want you to be aware of is getting registered is a little bit of a longer process depending on which state you're operating in. But in order to be registered, you have to have identified these key areas. Who is the employer, who is the sponsor, and who is going to be that related instruction provider. It could be you, like Kate just mentioned, being both the employer and the sponsor, or you have other partnerships. So that is really, really important. And then meeting that ATR and building a really good rapport with them. Kathy's going to speak to that as well. Is going to be important to just how you navigate the registration process overall. But at the end of the day, the whole goal is that this combination and partnership are training and supporting those tutors to being really effective tutors. And then the benefit of that is that our students are being able to, accelerate and catch up through that high impact tutoring that the tutor is able to accomplish. So thank you, Kate. So Tutoring Corps, how did we do this? So in New Jersey, the New Jersey Tutoring Corps has been a nonprofit since 2022. And when we kind of looked at the landscape around post-ESSER funding and what does implementation look like across the state, we noticed another thing, which is there's incredible teacher shortage. And so if we think about the highest priority for schools is serving kids, and in order to serve kids, you need to have teachers in buildings and adequate support and all of that. Then comes tutoring, or then come interventions. People can't focus on why high impact tutoring is an excellent intervention if they also are struggling with staffing at the same time. So also blending in the fact that the national landscape was looking even more favorable in embedding workforce or work-based learning, aka apprenticeships. This was a good fit for us. So we worked to ensure that we could get registered as an apprenticeship program, taking our foundational model of we are the employer, New Jersey Tutoring Corps, making sure that then we had instructional coaches on the ground, providing both supervision and support in alignment with the competencies that are required for a tutor apprenticeship. And then that is an opportunity for our tutors to earn a higher wage while they're working towards closing some of those education gaps that might be preventing them from entering the classroom themselves. Um, this was really valuable and important for our district partners as well, because as I said before, they're juggling and struggling with also having regular ongoing vacancies. Um, and so if we can be a partner that helps both close learning gaps for students and at the same time builds an organic, authentic pipeline into their school, then that's a win-win, right? And it's worth all the investment of energy, time, and learning around the apprenticeship model and also implementing a tutoring intervention because, as you all know, um, that is challenging in that first year when you're working with the district is, as you're adjusting schedules and all of those kind of things. So it needs to be a good investment. Um, Here's how we juggle these terms. So the on-the-job learning is what our site leaders use to provide feedback and coaching in their observations each week with each of the tutors. As they track and mark those competencies complete, we get to report it, and then our apprentices are able to earn a higher wage once they hit those key milestones. New Jersey Tutoring Corps partnered with an outside partner to run an RTI fellowship, which essentially takes all of the foundational work and necessary skills to be a high quality teacher, backwards planning to make sure that we're going deeper with each of our tutors so that they are experts at building relationships. They are experts at using data to drive instruction, and they are experts in professional collaboration and communication, which is so important and critical when you're working inside of a school building. And then last but not least, we have within those structures built-in ways for our tutors to learn from each other and seek support for each other through a PLC, and then also to have mentoring opportunities from some of those built-in site leaders. This was the timeline. If for those of you who are interested in pursuing something like this, you can kind of see how the timeline that it looked for us, but this is not indicative that or the same for everyone. So for us, it was about a year to get approved as an apprenticeship program. And then in New Jersey, the financial opportunities we already knew about them. That is probably the other thing I would prioritize as you're starting to learn, and we can talk more about later, is how to identify that funding. For us, the Department of Labor specifically has a grant program that is about expanding new occupations and increasing more apprentices, and that's called the Gains Grant. So we've been able to implement our apprenticeship program for the first time this year with the support of that Gains Grant. And most recently, this past February, last month, we also just got a pre-apprenticeship grant, which is a way to pre-train a cohort of individuals that you're hoping will then matriculate into either your apprenticeship program or a apprenticeship program. So we're excited to see how that goes this summer. So as a gentle reminder, this is when we talk about apprenticeship, we also make sure that we're including that it has to follow those national guidelines set by NSSA, that it needs to be high quality tutoring. This is not running an apprenticeship program with homework help, but I know that Kathy will be able to take you through this even better than I can.
Thank you, Ashley. I always get so excited when I hear about all the details in New Jersey Tutoring Corps, even though I've heard it multiple times. Thank you for having me here today. I'm super excited to share the resources that we have developed together and to help everyone who's considering it to develop a quality tutor apprenticeship program. As mentioned earlier, I'm Kathy Bentime with the National Student Support Accelerator. We are a program out of Stanford University. Our mission is to expand access to high-impact tutoring for students in need. And we do that not through providing any tutoring ourselves, but by conducting research and taking what we learn from that research and others' research to build tools and provide guidance through strategic advising and engagement. And in this case, we provided the research to support the development of the competencies for a tutor apprentice and created in partnership with New Jersey Tutoring Corps, the others on this call, and many even others outside of this Zoom group to develop the toolkit. And the toolkit is aimed at organizations who are interested in learning more and then also developing their own tutor apprenticeship program. But first, let's go back a slide and talk just a minute more about the tutoring itself and tutor apprenticeships. As Ashley mentioned, they are very specific in making sure that the tutoring they provide at New Jersey Tutoring Corps aligns with this framework, because tutoring can be defined in many, many different ways, and not all of those ways are effective. So based on, over 150 rigorous research studies, we at NSSA created this framework to describe the characteristics of what drives effective tutoring. And as Ashley said, this is not homework help. This is intensive, relationship-based, individualized instruction. And you can see the key characteristics in this visual. Just starting at the top left, high-impact tutoring is embedded in the school day or right before or after school to ensure attendance and coherence with the classroom instruction. Data is a critical piece of high-impact tutoring. The content of the tutoring session in effective programs is driven by the student's academic progress data, not up to the student to identify themselves. And data are also important for tracking implementation. Are the students getting enough tutoring, and for continuous improvement? In terms of instruction, effective programs use high-quality instructional materials that are aligned with Tier 1 instruction. It happens multiple times a week in small groups so that you can be sure and build those strong tutor-student relationships. And research shows that effective tutoring is provided by a consistent, well-supported human tutor. Many types of folks can be effective tutors. As you can imagine, teachers or retired teachers are especially effective tutors, but college students, paraprofessionals, community members, apprentices, and others can be effective as well, as long as they're well-trained and supported, which is why apprenticeships really fit super well with high-impact tutoring. And finally, around the circle, you'll see that effective programs are safe for students and their data, they're coherent, and they are equitable, meaning students have access to them. So this is the type of tutoring we're talking about in a tutor apprenticeship program. And now we're going to go to the next slide and talk a little bit about the toolkit. We use this research and New Jersey Tutoring Corps' experience, along with input from others at the Partnership for Student Success, Pathways Alliance, Deans for Impact, Serve Minnesota, Serve Colorado, AMPACT, and many others. And we built this toolkit. So the toolkit's divided into several sections, as you can see across the top. How to use the toolkit, understanding, registered apprenticeships, designing, implementing tutoring apprenticeship programs, and importantly, a detailed profile of New Jersey Tutoring Corps program. So it really lays out what Ashley just spoke about in concrete terms, so you don't have to have remembered everything she just said. So each of these sections provides guidance along with examples and templates to help you develop your own tutor apprenticeship program more easily. To take advantage of the toolkit, what we are recommending is that you start with the understanding section to better understand how it works, and then read through the New Jersey Tutoring Corps profile so that you can better understand how it operates on the ground to see if a tutor apprenticeship is promising for your organization. And then if you do decide to moving forward with the designing and implementing sections. So more specifically in the understanding section, we lay out what a tutor apprenticeship program is and why it may be worth considering, along with a chart that compares a tutoring program using an apprenticeship program with one that does not, so that you can see how your organization may shift or differ if it adopts an apprenticeship program. This section also includes a readiness assessment, which includes a clear set of considerations around items such as funding, organizational capacity, mission alignment, and many other items to help you understand how well your organization is positioned to move forward as an apprenticeship program. Then moving on to the designing section, here there is truly step-by-step guidance and templates and tools on everything from how to identify who your apprenticeship training representative is, who is your most important connection as you're going through the design and implementation stages. But not only who that training representative is, because you are assigned one, depending on where you are located, but also how to reach that person and how to build a relationship with them. There's also sections on what budgeting items you need to consider, how to understand your organization's funding opportunities, which is a huge potential benefit for running an apprenticeship program, is the access to additional funding streams that are workforce related. And then finally, in the implementing section, there is a checklist of action items or action steps with accompanying guidance for each one that include templates, examples, and resources to get you started. So that is the overview of the toolkit. We hope it is helpful for those of you who want to learn more and take advantage of the benefits. And I think I get to hand it back to Kate at this point. Or does it go to Sabrina?
Thank you, Kathy. It does go to
Sure.
Sabrina, but thank you.
Okay.
Really appreciate all the work you did on the toolkit, and I think it's a great resource. I'm going to pass it over to Sabrina, who will speak a little bit about how this fits into the bigger picture of other educator apprenticeships.
Thank you, Kathy. Thank you, Kate. And I really just want to build out on this a little bit by zooming out. When we think about tutor apprenticeships, I'd like to say that it's really important that we don't see this as a standalone program or initiative, but part of a broader education preparation ecosystem. And this is what we are seeing nationally, is that we're seeing a shift towards apprenticeships as a strategy across the educator workforce. And what we're also seeing is that tutor apprenticeships are often an entry point into that system. They create a really early, accessible way for individuals that often are part of the communities that they serve, and also that want to step into education. They get to earn while they learn, and also begin to build foundational instructional skills, which is extremely important, as some of our colleagues mentioned already. From there, we start to see really a powerful progression, and we really want to look at a broader system. As I mentioned earlier, is that you can be an apprenticeship, you can be an apprentice more than once. You could be a tutor apprentice, you could be a teacher apprentice, you could be a principal apprentice. And that is really where it starts, as by being a tutor apprentice to become apprentice multiple times throughout your career. And also this longevity of being in the education workforce system. At each stage, the core elements will stay consistent. You will, again, paid on-the-job learning, structured mentorship, aligned coursework, and also an increased level of responsibility and wage, of course, which is extremely important. So instead of thinking about isolated programs or how we are trying to come up with the best entry point, we're really now looking at this as a stackable career connected pathway into education. And that really matters. And what we're seeing is also one of the biggest challenges is that it's not only just recruitment that is an issue today, it's also retention and long-term career path options. And I believe that having this bigger picture of having a stackable career pathway into education really is a step in the right direction to solving that problem. Next slide, please. At Pathways, this is exactly the work that we've been focused on. Over the past few years, we've supported the expansion of teacher apprenticeships across the country, just from a handful of states, really two, when we started this work and when apprenticeships were becoming known, to now nearly all of 50 states have adopted or have an apprenticeship program of some sort. And what we've learned from this is that we started really strong with educator pipelines. And if we start earlier, we have the opportunity to make a pathway that is a lot clearer and more supported. And that's where tutor apprenticeships come in. And with tutor apprenticeships, we're realizing that they will support in doing two critical things at once. They'll be able to provide an immediate impact for students through high quality impact tutoring, as well as create a talent pipeline for future educators. We're already seeing this, of course, as our colleague Ashley mentioned, we're seeing this in places like New Jersey, where tutor apprenticeships are intentionally designed to support that pathway. And then we're also seeing, of course, there's pre-apprenticeships into the teacher pathway as well. And we're very excited about that work. So with this, we aren't just saying that it's all about starting with one thing or the other. It really just isn't about tutoring either. We are really trying to get folks to understand that there's a bigger picture here, and tutoring is really our entry point. But it is really building the next generation of educators in a way that's more accessible, more practice-based, and is also aligned to the workforce system needs that we're seeing in the field, in the space today. And more importantly, I think better than anything is that it's sustainable. And of course, and that's what we want. We want growth and we want sustainability. And when we're starting with tutoring, teacher preparation, and we're thinking about workforce funding, we are hoping that all of this, that there's some alignment, and that we're not just launching programs just to launch programs. We're really hoping folks are launching programs in order to build systems that will last. And I will pass it back to Kate.
Thank you, Sabrina. I really appreciate you sharing that and all the work that the Pathways Alliance has done to really advance educator apprenticeships over the last several years. And we're hopeful we'll see many more tutor apprenticeships like we saw the growth, or like you contributed to the growth of teacher apprenticeships over the last several years. So next we have time for Q&A from our panelists. So if you have questions, I think we have a couple there already, but please feel free to add to the Q&A function that you should see on your screen. And while we wait for folks to add questions, I'm going to start with a first question. I think this is probably a Sabrina or an Ashley question about age or education requirements for tutor apprentices. Do tutor apprentices need to be 18 years old? Do they need to have a high school diploma or a GED? What do you think?
Happy to jump in, then Sabrina jump in too. So for us, it depends on who your employer is. So if you are working, let's pretend you're a high school and you're trying to use and leverage tutor apprenticeship as a high school CTE program entryway into matriculating to a 4-year college and then a teaching program. As long as your state allows someone to work while they're in high school for you in that capacity, then technically they can be a high school age, and some people are 18, some people are under 18. For us in New Jersey, we have a rule for our tutors that they need to be 18 or older because we are the employer. And in order for someone to work with us and get their clearances, they must be 18 years old. So that's why it's a little gray in my experience, and sometimes state specific and specific to how you are building your apprenticeship program. Oh, the GED part. Yes, it's best practice that if someone's going to tutor students in K-12, that they also have demonstrated knowledge of K-12 knowledge. So I would say that I generally recommend that they have a high school diploma or a GED based on the nature of the tutoring that you're going to be doing.
Yeah, I agree with Ashley. I believe that there are baseline requirements for tutors that will, of course, be flexible and can vary by program sponsor, but at minimum 18, yes to an education as far as like diploma or GED, and also that they, of course, I would assume that most programs want to offer like background clearances and things like that for students. So yes, most programs do have specific requirements, but it varies by program.
Thank you, Ashley and Sabrina. I have another question on AmeriCorps funding and how the apprenticeship dollars intersect with, or have the potential to intersect with AmeriCorps funding. And I do want to preface this by saying we know this is a big question, and we are actively working to hopefully in the coming months schedule a briefing that is on this topic specifically with somebody who is an expert on this particular topic. Given that federal funding streams are complicated and using federal funding streams, you know, braiding federal funding streams is also very complicated. So the question is, can AmeriCorps living stipends be considered a wage for an apprentice, or does this need to be an employer that pays an additional wage? Does anyone know the answer to this question? And if we don't, please sign up for our newsletter because we do want to, the person who invited this, asked this question, we do want to invite you to this briefing that is to be scheduled, but will be scheduled on this topic. Ashley, do you know?
I'm happy to share conversations that I've had with folks who use AmeriCorps as a core funding stream for their program. When they investigated whether or not they could leverage tutor apprenticeships, the answer they received was no. So I believe it's likely a combination that you need to have more than just the AmeriCorps living stipend. But to Kate's point, I know that this conversation is being fleshed out and a more official answer is coming because there are so many different AmeriCorps programs out there that it's not a one size fits all answer. And so stay tuned.
So, and also I added a link to an AmeriCorps and apprenticeships, how they work together resource. And I think Ashley's right. In some situations, the answer may be no, but I think that with some of the folks I spoke with, it really is on a case-by-case basis and making sure that your ATR and your AmeriCorps folks are communicating with each other. And it would never be that AmeriCorps could cover all of the expenses, but there might be ways to braid that funding with other funding. And Kate is exactly right. We are hoping to host a whole session on exactly this question.
To build off of the braiding funding though, I think when you think about tutors also enrolling in post-secondary school while completing a tutoring commitment, you leveraging funding to pay for that is also how you'd be linking additional funding sources. So their wage that they're making by tutoring isn't going to cover everything. So I think that's how you should approach funding when it comes to apprenticeship program, that there should be multiple sources that are being brought in. For example, federal loan forgiveness, federal work study, but the different things that can pay for post-secondary are not related to the wages potentially that they're making, right? So it is a bigger conversation and worth the conversation with the ATR because that's how you know how you're going to pay for it all. Yeah.
Thank you. I think the next one is specific to New Jersey Tutoring Corps' model. Ashley, could you share a little bit more about the subjects that your apprentices are teaching and what age group or grade level they're focused on?
Sure. We do math and ELA in kindergarten through 8th grade.
Thank you. And then we have just a follow-up on about age requirements for pre-apprenticeships or apprenticeships and whether that's 18 plus for both. And I do want to clarify that 18 is not an apprenticeship requirement across the board. There are youth who do apprenticeships. Some states have it set at 16, so you don't have to be 18 to be an apprentice in general. I think what Ashley and Sabrina were sharing is that in this particular role, tutors may benefit from being 18, or sorry, apprentices may benefit from being 18, or benefit from, sorry, didn't realize the screen was still being shared, or benefit from having already completed their high school diploma or equivalent. And then pre-apprentice, but there are youth who do apprentices, and then same with pre-apprentices, there are youth who do pre-apprentices. And states may have particular guidelines, sponsors or employers may have particular guidelines, and that also may vary by profession. I've heard anecdotally that, we think about apprentices, it's a wide range of professions, some of which may be hazardous, or involve working with machinery that maybe a 16-year-old is not in the right place from a safety perspective to do. So these are conversations to have if you're thinking about implementing something with 16-year-olds. It's not impossible. Um, Another question about external providers or on-the-job training and on-the-job learning. How to ensure that this is on-the-job training happens for a tutor apprentice. Oh, Kathy, do you want to answer? Oh, okay. Sorry. I thought it said you wanted to answer the question.
So this seems a little bit like it depends on how you ensure tutoring is happening and is high quality. It should be in lockstep. So for us, we have a site leader that is in, because we implement high impact tutoring in person. So for us, that means another human needs to be there observing and supporting that tutor. And then we have the checklist as a guide to inform all of those observations and professional growth conversations. So think about, it's very similar to the K-12 teacher observation model. Hopefully, I know that New Jersey Tutoring Corps has more observations than a regular classroom teacher receives. So that's something that we did intentionally because they're younger, they're not as trained, right? And we want to make sure that the instruction is accurate and as high quality as possible for the students that they're supporting. But on-the-job learning is, like, I think these are synonyms in the apprenticeship world. That is not a differentiating thing. So if you're going to be an apprenticeship program, you're going to have a list, and it's going to be your work process, also known as your on-the-job checklist, and that's what you must follow. And so the related instruction is what is typically separate and different and not usually during working hours. So think of related instruction as classes or coursework that someone could be enrolled in. The fellowship that I mentioned, the way that we implement it with us. But that is not the actual observations while they're working, improving their work during the daytime. I guess trying to clarify between those two.
Thank you, Ashley. The next one, I think I'm going to ask Sabrina to answer this, and then I'd like to use this to open up a broader discussion about the national guideline standards. So Sabrina, the question is, if the Department of Labor approves the national guideline standards for tutor apprenticeships, will it be automatically available in all states, or do states have to opt in? Can you tell us a little bit how this works
Yes,
and
it
how it works for
will.
teachers? Yeah.
Yes, it will be available for all states to use. It's not something that you don't have to opt in. It will be available. But we do like to, I don't know if it's a disclaimer or guidance. We'd like to say that these guidelines are guidance efforts. They're not like hardcore rules that you need to follow. You will adapt and use them how you see fit in your state by your program. We'd like to say that they are the ceiling of quality guidelines, and that they're at the floor and they're not the ceiling. So yes, you do not have to opt in. They will be available, but use them as you see fit. We like to say use them as you're having conversations with your states, with your districts, to get them to understand the impact of how this will be supportive of tutoring efforts, and also how to support your apprentices. We say use them to understand what the initial requirements are to make sure that you have a quality program from start to finish. But again, it will vary by state, it will vary by program, but we do say that they are quality guidelines.
Thank you, Sabrina. And that leads me to another question. Ashley, could you speak a little bit to, so we've talked about these national guideline standards, which outline competencies that tutor apprentices should achieve, ideas for what they might do for related instruction, et cetera. Can you share a little bit about how, if someone's considering, let's say somebody has a high impact tutoring program today, they're considering starting a tutor apprenticeship, how might they use the national guideline standards to help them get there? Or even the draft that we have right now.
Sure. So the benefit of being able to have national guideline standards, even in draft form, provides you a starting point to review what is the bare minimum, to Sabrina's point around how my program should be operating. So it's in alignment with apprenticeship. You can add anything you want to it. But by and large, that's like your first draft, which it's very helpful as you're trying to also, I think, translate the education speak that we use into labor speak. But I think if you zoom out and think about it, when we take apprenticeship, it's like applying the alternate route model to teaching, to becoming a principal, to becoming any new career within education. So when you think about it that way, you're making a list. You want to make sure that everyone that completes your program has mastered all the same things and you feel confident handing them out to the world. So that's what that national guideline standards can start you off with. You should be doing these things. Can you do more? Absolutely. But this is the bar.
Thank you, Ashley. I think we have one more question before we wrap things up. And if anyone listening has more questions, now's the time. Feel free to add. Do you have to reapply to be an apprenticeship sponsor each year? What do the logistics of that look like?
Do you guys want me to handle this one? Okay.
Thanks, Ashley.
So no, I'm pretty positive it's one and done. So once you're approved, you can decide to run it or not run it. Once you are an approved program in any occupation, it's really about whether or not you are currently actively employing individuals in that occupation. So Tutoring Corps was initially approved as a K-12 teacher occupation. We are never running a K-12 teacher apprenticeship program. That was the only thing that was available to us. So we're never going to use it, but we are currently approved and able to if we would like. The sponsorship piece is where it's tied to our registration. So we chose to be the employer and the sponsor. We, to my knowledge, never have to do anything again. But my ATR would correct me if I'm wrong, or I'm sure say, you know what, we need to fix a few things. We're going to review that registration and make sure that we're staying in compliance. So it is not like I think some other structures we understand in education, like accreditation processes or things like that. So I would recommend don't make it more complicated than it needs to be, wherever that question came from.
Thank you, Ashley. Thank you, Sabrina. Thank you, Kathy. I really appreciate, I love working with each of you on this particular project, and really appreciate you sharing your knowledge and expertise with this group. I have a couple closing thoughts. So share my screen. Just a couple of final things. A few key takeaways to remember. I think you heard many people on this call say each of these things throughout, but really just to drive these home. Your ATR is your best friend. This is a person who is crucial to develop a strong relationship with as you develop and implement your apprenticeship program. It's really important for this person to be your ally. Second, as Ashley detailed, the national guideline standards can help you build and customize your program. The draft is available now for anyone to use. It's in the chat. We'll send it in our follow-up email, and it'll be strengthened once they're actually approved by the U.S. Department of Labor, though there may be changes to that draft, but it is available to use. Funding is state-driven, it's competitive, and it can shift with state and federal priorities. So it's really important to understand what the funding conditions, structures in your particular state, your particular locality looks like. And then, as always, quality for us, quality remains paramount. Um, it is really important that in order to prepare people to be the best possible tutors they can be, it's really important that they're operating in tutoring programs that are designed in ways that are aligned with evidence about what moves the needle for kids, about what improves academic achievement, among other things. So ensuring that if you're implementing a tutor apprenticeship, that your apprenticeship program is designed in ways that are focused on what's best for tutor growth, but also that your program is designed in ways that are aligned with the evidence about what works best for kids. So again, the Tutor Apprenticeship Toolkit, we will share this with you via email as well. Encourage you to check it out. It really has a wealth of resources on how to do this work and how to consider this work if you're not yet sure. A couple other resources. We are planning to launch a tutor apprenticeship working group on April 22nd. If you're interested in joining us, you can submit an interest form that is in the chat. We'll also include this in our follow-up email. This is really, if you participate in other PSS working groups, similar, really kind of a peer-to-peer community for people to share what they're working on, get input from people who may be grappling with similar challenges and work towards shared solutions. And then if you're interested in more updates, including updates on that AmeriCorps and apprenticeships briefing that we are working on, please subscribe to our newsletter. I think that's the next probably the next resource that we're really focused in on, apart from the working group on this topic. Want to make sure that it gets out to people who can use it. So with that, I want to say thank you. I really appreciate everyone taking the time to join us today. I hope there are more people today who are considering implementing high impact tutoring programs through using apprenticeship dollars or supported by apprenticeship dollars. And we're really excited to continue the conversation. And thank you to my collaborators, Sabrina, Kathy, Ashley. It's been great. Thank you.